This vodcast brought to you by Power9 Games.
Hello and welcome to Frontier Gaming. I'm Keyboard Therapy.
I'm Z.
And today we're talking about a post-meta recap analysis at the Las Vegas Open, which has occurred just this last week.
Yep, we both played some games. We did a lot of walking around.
Met some cool people from out of state.
We recorded a whole bunch of video as well. So,
yes, be sure and check them out.
Channel, yep.
So LVO being the first major tournament of the year often serves as kind of a benchmark, or at least a litmus test for what we can expect to see in the spring. That's the first season of ADR, and we saw some of the fallout from the last errata and some of the new releases from the more recent books.
Yep, for sure. There was also some exclusive stuff at the convention that saw its way to the table as well. Not as relevant, I don't think, as those other two things, but it did show up.
They were con exclusives, and we did see a couple of them. I actually played against Mobius and some Bloat Thralls, and that was cool.
Yeah.
But if you're in the area next year and you're thinking about checking it out, by all means, head down. So first, let's talk about the Masters. And the Masters had a great distribution this year. In fact, we saw everything but Convergence and Minions.
And no faction had more than two players of any of them.
It was really, really interesting. I think that Rhett took it home with Jeff Everett. And second place was Brett Fogel with his Trolls.
Correct, yep.
But we had a lot of upsets, a lot of new casters that we hadn't seen in quite a while. We'll talk about this more in depth as we go through the factions, but Grim definitely had a big presence.
Oh, yeah, for sure. There was
in the whole tournament.
Yep. Oh, man. Yeah. And hilariously, Brett Fogel specifically got list locked into Grim, and it turned out to be a bad matchup for him.
Yeah, I think that Grim is a pretty good drop in a lot of situations, and he just got list locked into the worst case scenario.
Yeah. So he was pairing with runes, and it just would have been the appropriate matchup every single time in all forms around as the master, which was unfortunate, but that's how that works.
Well, I want to talk about a few of the factions that had some standout appearances and had some deviations from the norm.
Yep.
And first, I want to talk about Khador. And listen, Khador bros, I'm a Khador player myself, and there's a lot of mope on the forums as though the refrain that the faction is being carried on the back of Butcher 3 occurs quite often.
Yeah.
And in fairness, one of the two Khador players that made it into Masters was using Butcher 3.
Yep.
But he dropped him in one of the games, I think. Only one. And one of the other pairs was a standard, actually a standard Sorcerer 1 gunline paired with a non-Theme Force Butcher 2.
Yeah, very interesting Butcher 2 list.
And something that we actually prepared for, Z and I played in the team tournament, and he used our Crix drop. And I had kind of put the fear of God into him as far as Zerkova 2 was concerned.
Yeah. Oh.
And we didn't see a single Zerkova 2.
Not yet. I don't think I saw her anywhere in the con.
She doesn't work her way into my pair because she doesn't really fit my play style. I did try her a few times, though, and I got to say, the more I played her, the more I appreciated her, and the more I felt that she had a real presence in the top 5 of the faction.
I think similar to Gatsby 3's relevance in Crix and other things like that, like newer casters, it's going to take a big name to place with her, basically, before you're going to see a lot of tournament presence for her, I think. So. But
that said, she is absolutely relevant, and I think that as Khador players become more and more familiar with her, that we're going to see a lot of her as the year continues.
Yeah.
Maybe not a lot, actually, because it does seem like we're sort of stuck playing this one thing into...
Again, to make the Gatsby 3 parallel, I think if we see her on ADR, if we keep seeing her on ADR, I think she will stay there until someone does well with her.
She's had 2 seasons back-to-back.
Yeah. I think just people haven't cracked her yet. Or at least felt that they've cracked her. I think she has a lot of game to a lot of lists.
Absolutely.
There's so much Croak Raider spam, things like that, where there's a ton of troops on the table, and her list can just clear the table easily.
Something that she can't deal with particularly well, and this was another of the I want to say the gunline archetypes that we saw at LVO, was the Rise of the Scorn bug line. As we're calling it, which is everyone sort of expected it.
Yep.
I was surprised with the frequency and the prevalency that we saw, that it actually had that weekend.
Yeah, and it was interesting to see that Fist stayed in the pair.
Yes, but they picked up some bugs.
Yeah.
Which was also...
Yeah, had some bugs in it, and then the other list was a primarily bug list.
It was a gun line, and most frequently they had bugs, which is why we're calling it the bug line. But we saw a lot of different casters actually at the helm of those lists.
Yeah, you can
Hexy 2, Xerxes 2, some of the ones that you would expect, and also some casters that were thrown in that were just the power of the Sentinel with its AD and poison gun.
Yeah, poison AoE
went in a lot of lists.
Real.
Yeah. So Scorn is definitely seeing a revitalization. I did not see too many Animantraxes, which...
No, disappointing.
Mixed bag. They're an interesting model. I definitely think that they have their place now.
Yeah.
It'd be cool to see more of them.
For sure.
But I think that the bugs are obviously powerful, whereas the Animantrax, you can't really think of it just as a singular package. You have to take... I mean, you don't have to, but when you factor in the Goblin Tinker for repairs, the Pain Givers spending their activation, whipping it to give it its tokens, and then the Impaler. It's really starting to add up. We're not even talking Will Breakers and Soul Wars, etc.
That's true.
So I can see why the Animantrax isn't an auto-included in a wide variety of lists, but I was surprised nonetheless that it didn't really make an appearance whatsoever. I'm sure that there were one or two that I just happened to miss.
Right. But couple entrees that we weren't seeing. So.
Right. So next we have Circle.
Yep.
And Circle is a tournament mainstay. The Circle presence at LVO was maybe not as skewed as it was in previous years. They seemed like they had a pretty fair representation, and maybe in light of the recent changes to Bradagus, that was to be expected.
Yeah.
But everyone we talked to, and we ourselves kind of also surmised that this change is at most a side grade, if not an actual buff for the matchups that he wants to be dropped into.
Yeah, I think, but that is considering people who know how to play him. Which
Sure.
I mean, there was experts there.
Yes.
But, and so that's why I think we saw a couple of Brad, but people that really knew how to play him. So I think that's going to be the key, though.
Yeah, I think that the Bradagus list that we did see, there was an interesting twist on them where they included more heavies than previously.
Yeah,
which
said, I don't need these tree things. I'm going to go all in on teleporting things onto your face and synergy.
I think that it is an overstatement to say that it was the most common archetype. But I would not be surprised if we see 3 heavies being at least the slim majority of Bradagus lists from now on.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
If we're going to see a Bradagus, I would not be surprised if they have 2 Guardians and a Warden or some combination thereof.
For sure.
What did kind of surprise me is that there wasn't a whole lot of Chromac 2.
No, there wasn't a whole lot of Chromac 2. I didn't see a lot of Morvana 2 either, which...
I think that's still criminal. The fact that you have a faction tournament staple and Morvana 2 isn't really making an appearance. I'm sure she is at some tournaments.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
Just not at LVO.
I'm sure she was there at LVO, at least.
I was looking for her.
Yeah, you couldn't find her?
If I was playing Circle, I would probably be playing Morvana 2, Kruger 2.
Yeah, same here.
But I saw a lot of Bradagus Kruger, I shouldn't say a lot of Chromac Kruger. Kruger is basically, I think, the common ground.
Kruger was all over the place, and it was like the same list, I think. Primarily, majority.
I would say that there is a trend towards the Una Double Griffin archetype. I don't know if it's exactly the same list, but certainly within 80-85%.
Yeah. Unfortunately or fortunately, that list has a lot of like really core pieces. Like you got the Druids, 2 sets of stones, Una and the Falcon, or Una and the things, and then all these modules, and then the rest of it is kind of like beasts. And
it's also a very skill intensive, activation heavy list.
Yeah, it is.
So perhaps, but when you think Circle, there's not a whole lot that can just skate by.
That's their playstyle. I think. I mean, in a certain respect, is activation intensive, skill intensive, and getting a lot out of it. So
yeah. Switching back to War Machine, we saw a fair amount of Crix, but not as much as I think that we've seen in years past. LVO has kind of been defined as a tournament that has, this is the year of Menoth in LVO.
Yeah.
I think in 2013 or 14, we saw an insane amount of Menoth in the field. And then last year it was an insane amount of Crix. Whereas this year we also have our outlier, which we'll get to in a minute. But Crix had a presence, but I think that it was within reason.
Yeah.
The one thing that Crix is adding to their toolbox that is new is Denny 3.
And it's terrifying.
And she's also something that we had discussed at length prior to the tournament.
Yep, for sure.
I personally played against Denny 3 just once, but I saw her being dropped in list after list, matchup after matchup.
I think we saw the Denny 3 mirror, which is interesting.
Interesting is a word.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think Denny 3 can kill herself, unfortunately. But
sure. Well, given what we talked about with Circle and Scorn and Kador and what they're bringing to the table, how do you feel about, as a Crix player, why didn't you bring Denny 3, I guess, is my question.
I just didn't bring Denny 3 because I don't have the experience playing her. I think that she is actually pretty good into gun lines because I think one of her strongest lines of play is baiting your opponent into shooting her.
Yeah.
And a gun line will take that bait a lot more often than another army will.
Mm-hmm.
And if they start shooting at her, like, they can just waste those activations so easily.
It does seem that she has a few, I'll go as far as say, extremely bad matchups, but by and large, everything we've talked about from Circle to Scorn, these rising archetypes really don't want to play against Denny 3, and I feel like she definitely has a place in the meta.
Yeah, I don't think Kruger 2 wants to deal with a Def 17 model that can't be pushed away that is still speed 7 after his feat.
Yeah. So the other main gun line that we saw that is sort of a deviation from what we saw in 2015 was the Troll gun line.
Yep. Oh,
and
man.
That
all over
is,
the place.
Yeah, there is... I'd say that was probably the most significant change to any faction that we've seen.
Well, I think we got one more, and I might call that more significant, but...
I think that, all right, without tipping our hand too much, their presence is more significant.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm talking about an actual sea change within the faction.
Sure, yeah.
So,
sure. Oh, man, yeah. Trolls are way different pair now.
I'm sure this comes as a complete shock to everybody, but EE is dead. That, however, doesn't mean that Trolls as a faction has removed itself from play.
I think, like I said in the errata video, like this is going to wake people up. So like, oh hey, I have all of these other tools that I can play with. Oh my god, they're all amazing.
Given the hysterical outcry from the internet, I thought that it would at least require a few months for the Troll players to pick themselves up.
Yeah, like a big win or something.
Seamless change.
Yeah.
Brett, again, placed second. There were a number of other Troll players that did very well over the course of the weekend.
So the cut to top 16, there was actually 3 Troll players, but one of them ended up switching to Scorn and actual Masters. So, yeah, like, Trolls are still playing, and yeah.
And in every event, not just the Masters,
Yep.
and not just the steamroller that fed into the Masters.
Correct, yeah.
They were all over the place.
All over the place. Runes is still a big thing.
Runes seems like it's the common complement to the gun line, but we saw Grim 1, we saw Grim 2. Kalandra out of theme is still an incredible force to be reckoned with.
Yep, and she runs the Glacier King as good as anyone else.
Yeah, we're seeing a lot of Croak Raiders across all the factions.
So many Croak
Raiders. Highwaymen, and then some of the old Troll staples have come back with Highwaymen.
Yeah.
But you mentioned the Glacier King, and I think that the biggest change across the factions, or at least some of the two of the top factions, were the advent of the Blightbringer and the Glacier King. And these were models that are very new releases in the grand scheme of things.
For sure.
And their presence was almost universal. That is hyperbole, because I'm sure that I'll say in at least 80% of the pairs there was either a Blightbringer or a Glacier King. There were that many. We spent a lot of time walking the halls, taking some notes on what we found, and there was just I mean, if you want to generalize a lot, I think you could walk down a table and I don't think you could see I don't think you could see a matchup where there wasn't a huge base. Correct.
Denny 3, Blightbringer, Glacier King, and then Hyperion.
Right.
Like all over the place.
Yes, it was definitely the Glacier King and the Blightbringer. These are, I think, at the apex of the second wave of Gargantuans.
Yeah.
But their impact on the faction is extreme and undeniable, and it happened with a rapidness that I was not expecting.
Yeah, and
I thought that maybe by late spring we'd start to see them in as maybe not even in the list and as common as we're seeing them right now. And perhaps it has something to do with that newness factor, which is why we're seeing them so often. But they're tearing it up out there.
I think. Yeah, you would not be faulted for thinking that War Machine is usually a slower.
Sure.
The changes are usually slower, but like we had the errata, and then the Blightbringer came out, and then LVO within a couple weeks, and total change, I would say.
Instant change of the landscape.
Yeah.
So we mentioned huge bases, and the last thing that we want to talk about is the fact that Retribution. This was the Retribution's year for LVO. Previously mentioned Menoth and Crix as having very high representation.
That's accurate.
Nearly 20% of the field was Retribution. I looked at the sheets.
Yeah.
Insane.
Yeah.
And among those Retribution lists, again, maybe 80% of them had at Hyperion in one or both lists.
Yeah.
This was definitely, if there was a single model that this was that model's tournament, this is the Hyperion's tournament.
Yeah.
It was everywhere.
Yep.
We saw a lot of diversity in the kind of ret lists that were played.
I mean, I would say the one standout would probably be Raven Theme.
The Will of the Nine Voices.
Yeah, Will of the Nine Voices.
There was a lot of that, but I was encouraged to see Ron, Assyria, even Ossian.
Yep.
But you're right, there definitely was.
I mean, there was a little bit of Thyron as well.
I didn't see him. That's super cool.
Yeah.
Do you know offhand if he ran the Hyperion or did he?
The list I saw was not.
That would make sense because his feet doesn't do a whole lot for it. Well, anyway, but yeah, this was definitely Rhett's tournament, and sort of as you would expect, I suppose. Rhett took it home.
Yeah. I think it was a real nail biter, but yeah, like it was a really good game, and watching all the games with Rhett and him, like
I think that the path to the finals was a nail biter. There were some very close moments
that's true.
along Jeff's path. The actual final, as we mentioned previously, was sort of an unfortunate list lock situation. But
yeah, it's really cool. I think if I were to say one thing that contributed to it, a lot less wound spam stuff, maybe.
Yes.
Led to Mage Hunters being actually really, really good.
Yeah.
They love shooting at Croak Raiders, I think.
Well, not to kick a horse while it's down, but the warders, the lack of warders, the gravitation away from.
There was so much trolls that if warders were still the force they were, I think that would have been insane. So it's kind of, I don't know, it's really interesting to see how much that changed.
To be fair, this was also a steamroller ADR, or the steamroller had ADR enabled for the qualifier.
Yep.
But I think that you could say that would account for at least a few percent, but certainly not for the overall
I didn't even
landslide
see
numbers.
Yeah.
And actually that's a good point. Very few people availed themselves of the ADR during the steamroller qualifier.
Even in the Masters, like I might not fault people for not realizing that the whole thing was ADR, but like I don't think did any of the people.
There was at least one. There's at least one that I remember entering that had a sideboard.
Right. Yes. Yeah.
But
I think the Crix player was playing.
Yes. Yeah. I believe so.
So yeah, very interesting to see, and yeah, there's so much retribution.
Rhett is legit. I remember when I got into the game about 2.5 years ago, they were sort of the sad puppy of the group. They were lagging behind nearly everyone, and now they are definitely running at the head of the pack.
For sure. I think the balance between the factions at least is like there was no faction on like their advantage in every matchup here. No, it's like every faction had like different lists they could take, different archetypes. A lot of gun lines from from the Hordes factions, but I mean,
it was very cool, and I think representative of a sort of a healthy game state.
Yeah, for sure.
Well, I think that does it for our LVO recap. If you have any questions or comments, please post them below. Otherwise, be sure and share, like, subscribe.
Yep.
Thanks, guys. See you next time.